Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 751. My opponent started off with e4. I went with c5, the Sicilian defense, and then he played bishop to c4. You can see that is way down on the list of moves that are played by white at this point. The main move, of course, is knight f3, preparing d4, just opening up the center. And other ideas here, knight to c3, the chameleon Sicilian, it's called sometimes. It's a flexible move that prepares for the Grand Prix attack or for a closed Sicilian, or even going back into open Sicilian lines, depending on what black does. And then there's also c3, the Alpine Sicilian. Those are the main moves here. And then knight e2, oddly enough, that was the choice of Capablanca. He thought that was the best move there. So bishop c4 is kind of nobody's favorite move. Although, in spite of the statistics here, it's actually not that bad, and probably white still has some slight opening edge. But, well, the bishop is a bit of a target there, and black is playing to counterattack, to hit that bishop with d5, and prepares that with the move e6. So, once when I was just learning, in my first tournaments, I was past the learning stage. I'd read a lot of books about chess, and I had friends that I played with, and I went to my first few tournaments. And, I faced someone who played this bishop c4 move against me in one of my first or second tournaments, and I thought, oh, this guy must not know anything about chess. But then he went on to beat me in that game. So there's more to the game than just the first move or two of the opening. Anyway, play e6 here, and then he played d3. That's probably not so great. Knight c3, the main line here, is it makes sense. And what white can do is, try and put pressure on black, try and control this d5 square and make black's plan a little more difficult. I think black, though, can get in d5 or force some kind of concession, like an exchange of the bishop for a knight. So, for example, knight to c6, just preparing knight f6 without having to worry about the e5 move, d3 at this point. And now, the opening book is pretty sparse at this point, but knight f6, I looked at this with the chess engine as well, bishop g5, and then bishop e7 to unpin. And still, white has managed to hold off this d5 move. This bishop might be subject to attack later with h6, and if this knight becomes unpinned, or if, sometimes black can start harassing the bishop with these moves as well. In any case, this is a way for white to play and get some kind of position out of it. But it's not what my opponent played. My opponent played d3 immediately in this position right after I played e6. He went d3, and so this is not particularly great for white. So I go with d5 right away. I get in my tempo after the exchange as bishop drops back, and then I kind of give the tempo back with this h6 move. It's a little bit slow, although it's still okay for black. I get in my knight to f6 without having to worry about the pin. But here's a funny line, or an interesting line, let's say. So I could play my knight here, and then he pins it. You go bishop e7, then he brings his knight out. And at this point, it might look like there's a threat he's got two attackers, I've got two defenders. He could trade off one of my defenders and win that pawn. But things are not so simple. So I can just castle here, and this is still good for black. I can also defend with the bishop, but I just thought this was an interesting little tactic here. So he tries to grab the pawn. Bishop takes, and say he takes with the knight. Then you can grab the pawn on b2, and this is good for black. And on the other hand, if he tries to take with the bishop, you can take the knight off with check and just win the whole piece there. So in fact, he can't really grab that pawn just by pinning your knight. So h6 is not strictly necessary. But anyway, bishop to f4 was his reply. I go knight f6 now, and now he goes f3. And after f3, at this point, black has a comfortable edge. Up to this point, it was maybe slightly in black's favor, but now black is definitely ahead here, although it's not clear if it's a win. But you know, I play bishop d6. I think that's a fine move. He could just trade and play like this, and I think it's still a game. You can get those pieces out. But black has the advantage. Black has the lead in development, and so it's probably a difficult game for white. But in this position, instead of trading, he played g3, and this is actually a losing move. So on move 8, I could have a win here, although I don't play the most accurate way naturally. I take, he takes. This is good. I'm just doubled the pawns here, and then I attack the pawns with queen d6. But queen d6 is a little bit of a mistake. I was kind of ignoring the check along this file. The chess engine wants to just castle right away or play bishop e6. You know, I mean, it's a commitment to castle on the king side. That's why I didn't really want to play those moves. The chess engine says there's nothing to fear. So if I'm going to castle, I might as well castle right away. I'm going to end up castling. I mean, well, the point is that after bishop to e6, he can pin the bishop, and the most natural way to unpin, I mean, he really is threatening to push that f-pawn to win the bishop, is to castle. So if I'm going to castle, I might as well castle right away and decide later where to put the bishop. And then say knight e2, preparing to put some pressure on the g file. b5, the counter threats come quickly. I guess that's the point. Why it's safe for me to castle is because my counter threats are so quick. I'm just threatening to win that piece. So c4 to block my pawns, take, and push. And so now I can try and get something going here. He brings his knight out to d2, and I have the move d3. So I don't know. I mean, he could have tried other moves at that point, but it just shows how black's advantage in development is pretty severe. He couldn't, in this position, it's not so great to move the bishop here and try and get the bishop active because I have the queen check picking up the bishop. And he's just a little difficult for white to find moves. If he plays the rook here, then you know, he is still going to run into trouble with this d3 move, I think, and he's going to have trouble finding a place to castle to, and the threats on the g file are just not quick enough to compensate. So so that's the best play here. Queen d6 allows him this one chance. He could have played queen e2 check here, hit my king, and now he really can't block with the bishop because he's got that f4 move to win it, and so f5. So I have to move my king to f8, and this puts white back in the game. It's not like he's won any material or anything, but he's made my position slightly awkward, and it gives him time to catch up in development. So that was his best play there. He went queen d2. So now I continue, knight c6, knight c3, good developing move. I play knight to d4. I'm putting pressure on these weak pawns and trying to keep his knight tied up. He castled queenside, and I go bishop e6. I'm preparing to castle queenside as well, and also an extra defender on this d pawn is never. No, it's a good idea in this position. So he comes over here, queen g2, taking a look at my loose g pawn, but I notice that I have time to throw in this, grab this pawn with check. He doesn't have any great way to defend against the check. That was something that will cause me to move the queen. So this gains a tempo. Now I can decide how to defend the pawn. The move I chose, g5, is actually my second mistake in the game here. It just creates a weakness over here on the king side that he can exploit. So the top choice of the chess engine is knight f5, just holding on like this, and say he continues to develop, and I just drop my queen back. Cancel that one. Oh, queen c7 was a recommended move from the engine, and it seems like I keep that winning edge in this position. I'm a pawn up, and I have a lead in development, and I can still castle on either side, depending on circumstances. Let's see, I went g5 here, thinking that was a way to secure that pawn. If I was going to move the pawn, maybe it would have been safer on g6. So we'll see what he could have done here. He could have gone like this, knight c to e2, and after the exchange, my queen drops back. Then he could play h4. And in this position, I can still castle queenside, and after he takes the pawn, bring my rook over here to g8 and pin it. So, it's still a game, and I still have some edge. But once again, that move has given away a lot of my advantage. So, anyway, G5 move. But he didn't play the most accurate moves naturally. So he went with knight G to E2. That seems like what you want to do, but he left his F pawn undefended. So I really could have just grabbed the pawn. I traded knights here, and so we'd end up in the same position. But instead of taking with his knight and chasing me back, he took with the queen. So I escaped that one, and I still have my edge that I had from early on in the game. Let's see. So I castle at this point. I played rook D to E1, lining up on the E file. Played king to B8, and he played queen to E5. And this, although this move is not labeled a blunder by the chess engine, it's clearly a mistake because it just forces a trade, and that's not what you want to do when you're down in material. And there's no big advantage that white gets out of that trade, this rook. It looks active, I guess, but it's not doing a whole lot. This pawn is adequately defended. And I spot an idea here. He hasn't done anything about his bishop, which is in very cramped quarters, and I play A6 to set up a trap for the bishop. Let's see, he plays rook H to E1, doubling on the E file. And now, well, according to the chess engine, I should be fearless and go ahead and play this move. I really didn't like this, and I'll show you the line. And this chess engine gives us as the line as well. Takes, takes, okay, so the bishop has to move. And then B5 to trap the bishop, and then takes, takes. And then he can even take with the rook. He doesn't have to take with the bishop. So, well, I'm a piece up. Well, it gives king A7. We'll get to throw by move in and then leave it in this position. But my king is totally exposed, and he's got, it looks like a couple pawns for his piece. But I still have an extra pawn over here. So really only has one pawn for the piece, in spite of the fact that he's chewed up a bunch of pawns. I guess I started with 2 pawns up. So, yeah, chess engine says go ahead and grab that piece and then win the game from here. But it looks like that would be hard to play. But the move I played was a mistake. So my 3rd or 4th mistake in the game, I guess, depending on how you count that section in the middle there. And it's because I'm walking into this pressure on the D file. And I was thinking, well, this rook is pretty well protected by the other rook and the knight. And, my bishop can come back and protect it if necessary. But in fact, he can actually grab the pawn at this point, taking advantage of the pin here. If I take back with the bishop, yeah, maybe that's the best choice. Let's see. What's if I take back with the knight, he can take with the bishop. Yeah, that's the simple line, and I can't take back. So really, he just grabs that pawn. What is it now? I have 3 over here and 3 over here. Yeah. So it's even material. And maybe some slight edge to black still, but once again, a huge turnaround, and white is in the game. Let's see. The other way to play it after knight takes is to take with the bishop. This is better than the previous line. He can take here, rook takes, and I take with the knight. And then he can grab on d5, and the rook is overloaded, right? It's defending the knight, and it's attacking the bishop. So rook takes, king up. Oh, king to a7. That was the chess engine line. A little bit counterintuitive, but I guess you don't want to walk into this check and lose the f pawn. So that's the way to play it. King to a7. And once again, let's see. I have 6 pawns. He has 6 pawns. But there is some kind of edge in this position to black. The line continues. King c1, rook to f5. Maybe because I can attack his weak pawns and I can bring my king into the game this way. King to b3. Can't immediately stop that. King to b6. So anyway, but the game would go on. That's the point, is that with this rook h to e8 move allows him once again to get into the game. But, well, he continues to ignore these little opportunities, and he plays knight a4. And this is the final losing move of the game, because now there's no way avoiding the loss. No way of avoiding the loss of the bishop. I play c4, takes, I take, and I like this line much better because my king is safer over here behind these pawns. Let's see. He tried something tricky here. Probably he just has to take the pawn, and that would be, I'd just be a piece up then. He tried this, and for a second I was worried that it might work, but fortunately for me I have these back rank threats, so it doesn't work. I have to make sure to take with the rook. So now if he saves his bishop, he got rid of the defender of this pawn, so the bishop can take there, but if he saves the bishop, I'll take the rook and mate him, and if he takes the rook, then I will mate him. So there's no way out, and he allowed me to do the checkmate there. So anyway, it was a fun game, a miniature. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Bye.